Good evening, Flosstube. My name is Laura, aka the Gin Stitcher, here on Flosstube, Instagram, and now on Blue Sky because Twitter is a cesspit, so I've moved over there. It's Saturday night, 15th of March, so here I am with orange juice with extra things in it. And I had a look on my account last night and had a bit of a nervous breakdown because I realised it'd been 6 months. I promise you, I did not realise that how long it had been since I last did some filming. My husband's been in London all day, which is about a 6-hour drive from here, so I've got a little bit of time to do some filming. And so I thought I'd gather all the stuff I've worked on, and I went, oh, this is almost a whip parade. It's not quite a whip parade, but there's quite a big pile of stuff down here that you can't see. That's going to be over there in a minute. So hopefully this video won't be too long. I haven't pulled out all the stuff I've acquired over the last 6 months, because that would be a little bit overwhelming. I've had all my regular Silks for You monthly silks. I've had my monthly yarn from Bothy and the Squid up in Scotland. My fabric from Kate Sparkley's. And then obviously my shopping. I've been bead shopping in Birmingham, which is about a 3-hour drive from here. What else have I bought? I think that's about it. You'll see the other things I bought because I've started them. So, with no further ado, let's go. We're going to start with a finish. I know in my last video I said that don't get too excited. There isn't going to be many more finishes, but I finished another one. So this is called Beach Huts by Karen something or other from Heritage Crafts. It comes as a kit. All DMC. It comes with either 14 count Aida or 27 count even weave. I've got the even weave, and the whole thing is probably 5 inches tall by 10 inches wide. And I finished this at the Devon Bee Stitchy Retreat in Tiverton back at the end of January. I took it with me with just the back stitch to do, and as you can see there's quite a bit of back stitch, and they made me sit there until it was done. I wasn't allowed to go and see anybody else's work. I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody. I wasn't allowed to shop. And I definitely wasn't allowed to get Bellatrix out, which I desperately wanted to do. So they made me sit there until it was done. But you know what? It is done, and that's good. And I like it. This is what my husband bought me for Christmas 2 years ago. So there you go. Apparently he doesn't know how to shop for cross stitch. I just have to give him the website. And then he shops. So, Heritage Crafts, very good. Comes as a kit, and reasonably good value. They did he bought those in a Black Friday sale, so he bought 3 for the price of 2, so that was not too bad. Okay, that's my only finish so far for 2025. Don't get too excited. There's not going to be many more. I mean, I say that every time, but I am not the world's fastest stitcher. So, next one then is probably the other one that went with that, which is in this bag. There is going to be zippers, I'm sorry. And it is this one, which is also Heritage Crafts, and it's called Thistle Shore. So it's a square design this time, with castles, sort of a classic Scottish shoreline. And I got this at the same time as the Beach Huts one. But I didn't start it until this year. Now I swapped out this time. I swapped out the 27 count even weave for 32 count easy grid because I'm lazy, and this makes the counting a lot easier. Got a light over there that's glaring. There we go. So that is basically how big the top quarter is. So there to there is about halfway, and that is about the midpoint down. So you give an idea, it's going to be 4 times that size. This is not quite all the way to the other side. I actually started that when I was on the plane to Canada last June, when I had a lovely German gentleman asleep on my shoulder who I'd never met before. So you can imagine that was a bit off-putting when it came to my stitching. I'd also been up. I'd flown on the Thursday, but I'd gone to work on the Wednesday morning and hadn't been back to bed since because I had to be at the airport at midnight for check-in to fly to Frankfurt, which is in the wrong direction, to then fly across the Atlantic to Canada. So I was pretty tired, but I don't sleep very well when I'm flying. In fact, I don't sleep at all. So I always take stuff to keep myself entertained. And that was what I started, and I got very confused because I hadn't brought a marker pen, I hadn't laminated my chart, and I had no idea whether I was coming or going, and all the colours are very similar. I just gave up very quickly on it. I'm just taking this one off the Q-snap because it's now too big to keep it in one Q-snap. So this is my nephew, who is now 8 months. So we're working to the normal timescale here of having it ready by his 2nd birthday. Who was born last June, and this is called Aurora from Etsy, and that is how big it is. So I've got the outline now, and the reason I've done that is because this section down here is basically all 939, and then up here there's a sort of triangle of 939 at the top, and I figured when I'm on really boring Teams meetings, guess what I can do? Fill in 939. Without having to have it up on Pattern Keeper and be marking it off stitch by stitch. So according to Pattern Keeper, we're about 3/4 of the way through this now. So I'm having to remember to hold it back because this is all reflections, and I don't know whether to put a backstitch line across here to try and differentiate the actual forest from the reflection down here. There is a pale bit of stitching here, but I can't decide whether it's obvious enough definition between the lake and the sky. So I'm just going to wait till I've finished and decide then. It will have his details on it when I have finished. His name will go up here. His birth date and weight and bits and bats will go at the bottom. And I'm thinking of phrasing the phrase, my niece I put adventure awaits. So this one I'm thinking life without limits, but I haven't quite decided yet, and I will have to chart it. So don't hold your breath. But that is Aurora from Etsy. Don't ask me the name of the designer. It's Eastern European, unpronounceable type name. Stitched on 32 count, sparkly even weave from Kate Sparkley's in a shade of green. Interestingly, these stitches right in the centre here are basically the same colour as the fabric. But it's fine because they are just in the middle. I've only got about 5 colours left on that to stitch, and one of them is 939 and the other one is 823, so you can see that I've got a lot of dark to put in. So let's get rid of that. I found another pair of scissors. I always have scissors in bags, and I don't know how they end up in there. I have gained this. It was on the freebie table at the Devon retreat. It's a dinosaur alphabet. I haven't decided. It started. I haven't yet decided whether I'm going to carry on with what's in there or whether I'm going to start it again on a different piece of fabric. Still to be decided. But I thought it was cute. So that's currently living in the same bag as my beach huts was living. You know, because all my project bags seem to be multitasking at the minute. Okay, what else have we got? We have got Christmas stitching. Apparently I don't care whether it's Christmas or not. Bothy Threads, Noel I think it's called, Yuletide, Christmas shoe. So that is exactly what it says on the tin. It is one of their shoe series. I don't think it's in production anymore. So I don't really have any problem passing on the chart when I'm finished with it. But it will come with leftover threads. But arguably I think there's going to be quite a lot of leftover threads because I am changing stuff out. So I have changed it out for a piece of green fabric from Jodrey Designs. She's not dyeing anymore. And it's really creased. Because it's linen, so it just creases when you look at it. This is 32 count non-opal linen, so it's plain linen in dark green. Right, so last time you saw this, I didn't have any of the white done at the bottom. I barely had got all this green done at the top, so I've really quite got on with this. I've also done all the flowers here. Now I've started the back stitch. I don't know if you can see it. And I've swapped out the dark green for the back stitch for a Rainbow Gallery dark green treasure braid. I'm loving the fact that it's sparkly. What I'm not loving at the minute, and I might have to just pin it on the wall and see how I feel, is the fact that it's all whole stitches. And then you're back stitching to make it look like holly and ivy. And I'm very tempted to rip it all out and restitch it with fractionals. You know, because I'm a glutton for punishment like that. So I haven't quite decided yet, but I need to decide soon because there's a load more fluffy bits over here and I need to decide before I stitch those. I've also got some white beads. There is gaps here all the way down these red bits, and they're all for white crosses, and I've switched them out for a white bead, but I'm not stitching the beads in yet because I'm stitching out on a Q-snap, so I need to be able to move it up and down for now. And then I've got there's lots of back stitch on this white in a dark grey, and I'm going to get a silver treasure braid, probably out of stash, to do that. So the whole thing will be a lot more sparkly than it is. I've also got some snowflake charms that I got when I was in Southampton last, and I'm umming and ahhing as to whether to put them on. Haven't quite decided yet. They may just get sort of sprinkled around the chart. So that's the colours. As you can see, they're quite Christmassy reds and greens. But I think there's going to be quite a lot left. Maybe not enough to stitch it again. We'll just have to wait and see. So that is another one I've been working on. I have done quite a lot of work on that, so I'll probably put that away now for a bit. I will say that my New Year's resolution this year, because I didn't do a whip parade in 2024 because there wasn't any point, because when I looked actually back at my project list, I realised I'd only worked on about 6 of my whips and I've got like 50. Some of them was because they just weren't talking to me at all. Some of them were just so big that they're a bit unmanageable and overwhelming. So this year I have set myself a New Year's resolution to touch every single one of my whips this year. And what I've decided to do, and admittedly it's easier on the Pattern Keeper accounts, Pattern Keeper pop charts, is where I'm stitching 10 stitch, they get 2,000 stitches every time I touch them. Where they're full cross, they get 1,000 stitches every time I touch them. Now, obviously if it's on paper chart, there is a bit of guesstimating going on. But, so I'm not being precious about it and going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 until I get to 1,000. But I'm sort of looking at it and going, I've coloured in about 10 squares, that will do. Because if I don't, some of these are never going to get done. And whilst I still maintain that one day, the British government might allow us to retire. And then I'll have lots of time, but no money. So I need to buy my stuff now while I have money, so that I can stitch it later when I don't have money. So there is a bit of that going on. And certainly when it comes to things like yarn collecting and fleece collecting for spinning, I'm certainly thinking more about the future than I am thinking about right this instant, because it all keeps. It all goes into a Ziploc bag. So it's all I buy for spinning in particular. I tend to buy merino and I tend to buy silk, because, you know, why not? So that makes those bats, which is the lump of fluff, more expensive. But I stick it in a Ziploc bag, squish all the air out of it, and it's fine. It'll keep potentially for years like that. So I'm not worrying about it too much. I do like to get a couple of 100 grams of everything. When I buy a colourway for spinning, I tend to buy a couple of 100 grams of each, so sort of 8 ounces of each, so that I've got a decent amount to spin when I get round to it. Okay, next one is a new start. Guilty. So this one popped up on Heaven and Earth as a limited edition. It's called Phoenix Heart, and this is the mini version. In all seriousness, excuse me, I can't tell the difference between this and the full version as yet. I'm stitching it 2 over 110 on 32 count, easy count, and I got it kitted up by Barb Heaton at Thread Geeks. and she kitted it up, and I think I paid about £65 for the kit. She didn't provide the fabric, so it's just the DMC. But it comes on a card like that, all the numbers printed on and conveniently labelled so that you know which kit it is. And whilst I'm not being sponsored by her or pushing her in any way, I will say she's great. It's very convenient. It just arrives. I mean, it's a bit tangled at the minute because it's been all over the country. But essentially, it comes like that, and she invoices you on layaway, so you can pay for it over a couple of months, which I think is brilliant, because DMC in this country is getting astronomical. So that is where I have got to so far. That is the bottom left hand corner, and yes, believe it or not, there is more than one colour in there. The lighting in here is not very good today, so there is a bit down there that's lighter. We've done about 5,000 stitches. Because I'm doing it 10, and because it's the bottom corner and it's the background, there's quite a lot of blocks of colour in there, so I just kind of got on with it, and it went really quickly. But as we're getting into this next 20 diagonal has a lot more colours in it, so it'll slow down when I pick it up again. I haven't picked that one up for a couple of months now, because my sister came to visit over Christmas, and then I was poorly, you know, because toddlers and germs. And they brought germs with them, then they collected some more germs on the plane, and then they shared them with everybody. So we were all sick. But it was okay, you know. I don't get to see my niece and nephew that often. And I'd seen them more than everybody else because I'd been over for their births and things like that. So it was still nice to see everybody. Right, next one is Silver Creek Samplers Follow Your Heart. And it looks like that if you stitch it as called for. So I have it laminated. On one side is half the chart, and on the other side is the actual design. I'd lost the other page, still have lost the other page, but I found a photocopy of it, so that will do. I can now stitch the bottom half of this chart without having to try and figure it out from the picture. So I was stitching it in the corner, and I restarted it in the middle. And we are well over halfway now on this. I was trying to get this finished. And then I can't remember why I got bored. I think I got bored. Not gonna lie. Samplers are beautiful. I love them, but I don't really have a huge desire to stitch them. I'm just trying to, because this is linen, it's quite thin. It's letting the light in through the back. That's better. There we go. So I have put 2025 on the top. So I do have to finish this year. But in all seriousness, it says follow your heart, but take your, and then this is stitching, and then we have with you underneath, and then we have a bit of decoration around the outside, and then it's done. There is not a lot left to do on this. I just need to do it, which is the age-old thing. I've completely changed this out from the called for threads to Silks for You, and it's being stitched on a Jodrey 32 count linen called Fighting Fish. It is a second. There is a couple of dye spots on it. I think that's why I originally started it in the corner, but I just decided to move it to the middle. I'm not going to use the other half of the fabric, so I figured I may as well just restart it in the middle. I'm using a red, a gold, a variegated, and a brown. So they're not wildly different from the called for colours. A gold, a red, a variegated, and a brown. She says that's upside down. And then that was the called for Weeks Dye Works. So they're not, that's pretty much the same. But these are different. So I was like, I'm buying them. They cost me $20 a month US. I need to use them. So I did. Got a drawer full of them. But I always feel really guilty if I pull them out. And I really shouldn't, because I paid a lot of money for them. Okay. Next one is my Phoenix. So this is fine. I mean, it's taken me a long time to get this fully kitted up, and I think we're about there now. that is the colour scheme, which, as you can see, is very orange. It's an incredible amount of orange. But there is some green in there as well, which threw me a little bit. So this is another Heaven and Earth, stitching at 32 count, 2/1 tent. Get it the right way up. And again, that is the bottom left hand corner. And as you can see, we are finally getting some colour rather than just 310. Don't get me wrong, it has 40,000 of 310 in it. And that's fine, because I take it on retreat sometimes and I just go mow the lawn backwards and forwards, doing 310. And it means I can chat. And doesn't matter if I lose my place, because I'm not actually doing anything particularly fatal. So that's where we're on that. We're about 7%, I think, on that one. So none of these are particularly huge because I've taken them down to 32 count. You know, I've got a 3-inch margin on that, so it probably finishes up here somewhere. So they're not, because I've taken them down to 32 rather than 25, none of them are actually that big, apart from my Amy Stewart a stitching shelf, because that's just enormous. And it's not even the max size one. I don't know how anyone would want to stitch something that's 999 stitches across. I don't have a wall big enough. I don't even think I've got a wall big enough for the one I'm stitching. Not that I've touched it for a year. This is my Chatelaine. I've got a sneaky suspicion this hasn't changed since you last saw it. So we'll just have a quick look at this one. So this is the Sparkly's Unknown fabric. It's half a yard. Don't need half a yard. I've started near the top so that I'm going to have a load left at the bottom. That is pretty much how wide it is across. This curly bit here is the start of this corner over here. There are beads on it. I'm sort of beading as I go. That is the first greenhouse. There's 4 of them and they're all different. So that's one thing I do like about this one. This is Indian Summer Reflections. The centre is the same, but the 4 outsides are different. So it's growing very slowly, I think, is the way I would describe this one. There is an incredibly large number of Glorianas in this one. It feels very decadent to be stitching in threads that I waited the better part of 2 years for. Kitted up by Hawkins Hobbies for me. Don't ask me how much I paid for the kit, I can't remember. But again, it's pretty much all silks. Those 2 skeins there are the only DMC in the whole thing. Everything else is silk. So it does have a very decadent feeling. It's not opal fabric, it's just plain fabric, but I think that's okay because I think as it progresses it's going to get very, very sparkly, and it's not going to need the opalescent fabric. Okay, another new start. Now I'm not going to lie, I've not got very far with this. I went to the Knitting and Stitching Show in Harrogate in November 2024. For those that are in the UK, that is a big knitting show, a big crafting show, and its sister show is at Alexandra Palace about 3 weeks before. And they've just started one in Ireland, same company. And I bought this. A friend of mine who introduced me to spinning asked me if I was going to buy an Abris Art gingerbread house, and I went, you what? What is one of those? And I'm looking for the Abris Art stall. Is there an Abris Art stall? No. It was on Beads Unlimited or something like that. Anyway, if I was buying her one, I had to buy me one. So I bought this, which is a beetle. This is a Ukrainian kit, hence the blue and yellow flag at the bottom. And it comes as a kit. So what you get is a pile of beads. About it does say on here 3,110 beads. They're not joking. And it comes as a canvas. Now, if I had any criticism at all, it's that the canvas is quite literally that big. And I stitch on a Q-snap or a frame. So I got my sewing machine out and I made it bigger. It's upside down. So what you get is a printed canvas like this. And it has holes, it has little circles all over it. And everywhere there's a circle, you put a bead. And as you can see, I put 3 whole beads on. And the circles tell you which direction to point the bead so that it works. They are basically, they're not mill hills, they are check beads, but they're size 11 equivalents. And as you stitch it, it just gets sparklier and sparklier and sparklier. It came with a one of the long bendy beading needles. And I was away at retreat starting this and I went, this is ridiculous, this is not working. There's got to be a better way of doing this. I haven't quite figured it out yet. Seriously considering a hypodermic needle to punch the fabric and then put the needle through with thread on it, but not quite sure. So hence I've sort of been glaring at it for a while because I'm a little bit frustrated that I just wasn't in the mood to get blisters on my fingers and break the needle on what is essentially artist canvas. It's not like needlepoint canvas or cross stitch fabric at all. It is very much painter's artist canvas, so it's solid. Okay, hubby got me this one for Christmas. Once again, Heritage Crafts. You can tell he's found a website he likes, and it is called I Don't Do Mornings. And the pussycat on a cushion. Now, again, Heritage Crafts comes with 27 count even weave or 14 count Ada. I always ask him to order it with the even weave in case I don't want to swap the fabric out. But I have swapped it out on this one. I haven't started this yet, so this technically is haul. But it's not very big, so I've pulled out a piece of this, which is picture this plus 32 count linen in Nocturne, and it's 16th. So it's a pale grey blue, and I've checked it against the threads and it should be fine. There's a couple that are a bit close, but they're sort of in the middle of the stitching, so I'm not going to bother about it too much. So that's going on that one. I took it to the retreat in Tiverton, didn't start it. Gained a couple of bags. This is a Bee Stitchy bag with Halloween houses on it. So, but again, there's 2 projects in there, it's multitasking. They got to earn their keep to be in my house. Okay, right. Another new start. This is Gecko Rouge. I treated myself. I bought 2. The other one I've put somewhere safe. This is going to crinkle. I'm really sorry. So it is Eye Candy by Gecko Rouge. Left hand eye. And I started this on retreat. This was my new start for retreat. I ordered it with 28 count easy count, and bear with me, it goes that way up. You probably can't see it because I'm stitching the yellow, so there's a lot of very pale stitches gone on that, and some green randomly in the middle. I basically started with the lowest count stitch count and went and worked my way up from there. So instead of starting in the bottom left hand corner like I normally would, I'm stitching this one what's it called, cross country, colour by colour at the moment. The reason I say at the moment is because the whole background is stitched in white, and I don't want to have, I want to work all those threads in. I don't want to have trailing threads behind the white. So it comes like this on a pretty card, all on thread sorted cards. Now you don't get the DMC numbers with the Gecko, you get code numbers, although somebody did say they bought one this year and it did come with the DMC numbers, so I don't know whether they got lucky and somebody made a mistake or they've changed their policies, not sure. But my 2 geckos certainly have just code numbers on. It doesn't matter. Well, does it matter? Does it matter? I don't know. There's going to be a lot of thread left I've certainly got a lot more thread than I need for this kit. So that's going to be a little bit frustrating. But I'm not then going to be able to add what I know is DMC into my stash. So that's it. But I do have a DMC colour chart with the threads in. So there isn't any reason why I can't match most of them off anyway. Okay, the pile down here is getting ridiculous now. 2 cross stitch to go by my reckoning. So we're not doing too bad. We've only been on half an hour. Okay, so the next one is Autumn Equinox Pixie from Bella Filipina. Now, I remember talking about this one last time because I had cocked up quite spectacularly, and I had literally launched it into a corner because it had stressed me out and I couldn't figure out what I'd done wrong. Everything seemed to be matching up against the chart, but it didn't match up in real life. So I gave up, and it got officially relegated to a corner for a little while. Now I'm stitching this on a 32 count even weave in the colourway Rainbow from Sparklies. This is not a colour you can get. She dyed a batch as an experiment early on in COVID and decided it was more effort than it was worth, but I managed to get my hands on a piece. Officially it's supposed to go that way up, but I am stitching it the other way up. So this is the top half with the greens and the blues. Some of this is then going to end up behind the frame, and that's perhaps a little bit frustrating, but hey ho. And this is where we are at. So that is her waistband, that green bit there. That is the bottom for her skirt, and she has a leg coming out here somewhere. So where did I go wrong? Well, in short, last time you saw this, it had a load of stuff up here, and all of that has come out because I don't know whether it was right or wrong, but I couldn't figure it out. So I was on the verge of ripping the whole thing out and starting again on the same fabric. I wasn't going to change the fabric, but I was going to start the whole thing again. And then I realised that this bottom bit is right. I know that's right because it all matches up against each other. So I just ripped the top out. And I know this is right because it joins onto here and it joins onto the twig. So basically I've taken what I'd done of her wings out, and I'm working on the skirt. So I have actually put quite a lot of stitches into this. Whether it looks like it or not, I don't know. Where there is gaps, it either needs a Krynic or it needs beads. The Krynics I don't have because they're not easy to get at the minute with the changeover to Rainbow Gallery. So I'm not even stressing about it. They will come available when they come available. And I've recently purchased the bead pack from Arts and Designs up in Scotland, because whilst I had some of the beads, again, a part of me is like, well, that's convenient. How much did I pay for that? £28 plus shipping, I think. And there was 13 packs of beads in there, including 4 packs of crystals of varying shapes. So I didn't think that was a bad price. And there aren't any Magnificas in this one, I don't think. But that alone is a reason for buying the pack for me, is you get your Magnificas that are really hard to get hold of at the minute. There's a needle in that. Don't fold it there. So she is my current sort of project, although I am coming to the end with her, I think, for a bit. Pearl of the Orient Sea has been talking to me recently, and she's come out of the cupboard. She hasn't made it out of the bag yet. Mainly because I've been doing a big project at work, and basically I've logged off work at 6 o'clock and gone, I'm going to bed, night, rather than doing any stitching. So, last stitching project is Bella Filipina. Bellatrix. So she has also had a decent amount of progress since you last saw her. The book is basically finished. The candles are more or less done. It's just one colour missing from the flame because weirdly I don't have it. The arch is done with DMC and Krynic, but not with beads. So I've just got to bead the top, and then this is her shawl thing, and that's where I was last working on it. I've got a feeling something's just fallen off this. So far she is more or less stitched as called for. The only thing that I have changed is these beads on the wooden book stand. I've changed to Adelica, and it's purely because I think where they've gone into what is essentially supposed to look like embossed wood, I think they look more regular, and that's the only reason. The only other thing I'm probably going to change is there's a little kitty cat down here to go in, and I'm probably going to change him to the fluffy one. The name is escaping me right now. The Rainbow Gallery fluffy one. So that he can have a bit of texture, rather than, because it's charted in just DMC 310. So we'll see when we get there. If I do it, it'll probably be last anyway, because I don't want it to get squashed. This is a Pulse Stitches 28 count linen opalescent in the colourway Fantasy. And it is weirdly a 36 by 36, 26. It was more than a fat quarter anyway. 26 by 26. Because this was one of the early ones, and it didn't it fits on a fat quarter if you do it on 32 count. If you do it on 28, it's very, very squeaky. And this was my first Bella, so I wasn't really willing to take the risk. But yeah, she's coming along. She's got a long way to go, but she's coming along. Right. I then have knitting. In case nobody forgot, I learned to knit last year. And I finished that shawl. You saw it. It's got about 4,000 beads in it. Not doing that again. Because, you know, wow. Everybody thought I was completely insane. This one is the second knitting project. This is my reading shawl off Ravelry, shamelessly inspired by Sticks, Strings and Other Things. I have reversed the colourway a little bit. The pattern calls for this to be a pale colour, and I got this as a Rowan DK from Black Sheep Wools, and then I went and bought a load of minis to sort of go with it. You know, did it all backwards. And this is where I have got to. Do not ask me how many stitches are on the needles. I have no idea. Apart from a lot. I think we're in the region of 300. But I haven't counted it for a while. And if there was no more giveaway as to when I last filmed, that's where I was last time I filmed. And we are now down there. So, oops, sorry. Next colour is purple. So we've had 3 bands of degrees of pink, and then we're going into a purple. And then after that, I haven't got a clue, because I've got a big pile of minis over there and I haven't decided what's going next. I do know what's going last, and it's an almost grey-black. But in between that, no idea. So that's knitting project number 1. Knitting project number 2 is in my Amalfi bag. And whilst this one is technically on the needles, it's got the stoppers on at the minute because I'm having a bit of a break from it. So you saw this one before, and last time you saw this one we were up here. So I had finished the initial top section, which is all just stockinette stitch and reverse stockinette stitch. So we'd got all the way down here, and then I had this lace to do. Second ever knitting project. Weird lace. Do you want to know how many goes? I took 3 goes. 3 goes. And guidelines, safety lines went in after the first failed attempt. Technically, when did I start this? April 2024. But that's a bit misleading, because I went to Canada in June 2024 and I was down here. So then you're thinking, my God, she didn't do very much between now and then and now, did she? Yeah. My beautiful, then 2-year-old niece got hold of my knitting. Is this my fault? Yes. Is it her fault? Yes, because she managed to get it off a place she shouldn't have been able to reach. She got hold of it, she pulled it off the needles. I am not an advanced enough knitter to be able to work out how many rows she pulled out, how many stitches I should have had, and get it all back on the needles. When I'd also was 5,000 miles from home, I'd only taken the 4mm needles I needed for it, because, you know, I already had 50 kilos of luggage, didn't need any more. And I went, I can't deal with this, and it went in my checked suitcase, and it just flew home because I was like, nope, this is too much stress right now. I got home and I just pulled the whole thing off the needles and unravelled the whole lot. Now, that did have a benefit, because as charted, it doesn't have these extra bands. This whole section down to here is one colour. And actually, it was a bit boring. It was lovely, don't get me wrong, it was lovely. But for me, it was a little bit dull. So when I re-knitted it, I knitted more. This is charted reverse stockinette down here. And I added some more reverse stockinette in up here, in a bit of a pattern. Then I had 3 goes at doing the lace. And we did eventually, let's see if I can get you to see it. There we go. We did eventually get it right. But my God, never again. Then I had a load more reverse stockinette to do. And now we are down into what is technically on the pattern, the last bit. But I've still got loads of yarn left. So we're just going to carry on until I run out of wool. So it is going to be bigger than called for. I've got a little bit of the blue left. Not a huge amount. But enough to put a couple more rows of reverse stockinette in. To try and, it's not going to match this. I don't have enough to do all of that. But we should be able to do something similar. And then we'll just go to the end until we run out of the grey. It finishes with 3 rows of garter stitch, so you can match off your garter stitch border. And that's it. So it's nearly done, but I've pinched the needles for the next project. I'm going to Wonderwool at the end of April, which is at the Royal Welsh Showground. And I'll probably get some more 4mm needles. So then, okay, let's just get a bit of perspective here. This was for a wedding. I was buying a green dress for the wedding. Did I buy a green dress? No, because the only green dress I liked in the shop didn't fit. So I bought a red dress instead. So then I needed a new shawl. Now, conveniently, because I'm going back to Canada in June and the flights were a little bit eye-watering, because apparently everyone's flying to Canada instead of the US this year, I already had this, which is a Mothy and the Squid, and it is called Glacier. It is shades of light grey, dark grey and white. And it's got a little bit of stellina in it, but not nearly as much as the other one had. It is a sock yarn, so it's 4-ply weight. And I was rummaging for a pattern. I had decided I wanted to do an asymmetric shawl this time, but I couldn't find a pattern I liked because they all seem to be garter stitch, and the wedding is in June, so it's not going to be cold. I don't need a shawl for warmth. I just need a shawl to finish the dress. So I'm knitting a fishing net instead. So this is my own pattern. Yes, I am still a beginner knitter, making up my own patterns. So it's an asymmetric, so you can see it is getting, we're starting at a point and we're getting steadily bigger. Is the pattern very repetitive? Yes, because I'm just repeating the same stitch over and over again on the forward row, and then on the back row I am just knitting back. So technically it's a form of garter stitch, but it's a garter stitch with holes in it. So that's where we're up to so far. You add 1 stitch every other row, so it's not getting that wide. It's getting longer than it is getting wider. It's a bit curly, but I'm hoping that blocking it will fix that problem. And if it doesn't really matter. My only question is, I'm trying to decide, when we get to a certain width, do I figure out, because I'll have to figure it out, how to make it smaller again, even if we don't go all the way back down to a 1 stitch point? Or do I knit a split into it so that you can put the pointy end through the fat end? I haven't quite decided yet. And if I do either, I'm going to have to work out how to do them both. So that is where we are at with that so far. And actually I'm quite liking how the pattern is knitting up. It's quite delicate, and I'm thinking, and when it's blocked, it's going to be very, very fishnet stockingy, which is maybe not appropriate for a wedding. But hey ho, we'll see how we go. So this one's on the clock. Got to finish this by early June. I am going to take it to Wonderwall with me because I'm not driving this year. Somebody else is driving, so I can knit in the car. And we're going to Greece in May, so I will take it to Greece as well and make sure that I get a good chunk of it done every day. And that is everything. So plans are finish the fishing net shawl, try and finish this one, but this is no longer a priority because I'm not wearing it for the wedding. After that, I don't know. Probably Pearl of the Orient Seas, because I haven't looked at her for ages and she's feeling very neglected. She's another one that I've fully kitted up from the DMC perspective, but less so from the bees perspective. So probably next month's craft shopping will be her bead pack, if there are any in stock. And that is me. So come and join me on Blue Sky. It's much friendlier than Twitter, I promise you. And I will promise to try and be better at posting on Instagram, because I've been terribly shocking at posting on Instagram. But I have been posting my progress on Blue Sky. Good night for now. And I will try to make it less than 6 months next time. Maybe.